been the type of person who gets everything done on time, especially when it comes to taxes. Not because I enjoy filling out piles of paperwork, but because I hate the feeling of having something unfinished. And this year was no different. Tax season rolled around, and I spent a Saturday morning rummaging through the financial documents in our fireproof safe, a heavy metal box, neatly tucked in the corner of the closet in our bedroom. I didn't expect anything unusual. It's the same boring routine every year. Income statements, mortgage documents, insurance bills, all neatly filed in labeled folders. I was going through the papers mechanically when an unfamiliar envelope caught my eye. It didn't have my name on it, only the embossed letters of CF Bank. I frowned. We've never used CF Bank. At least I haven't. Curious, I opened the envelope. Inside was an account statement in Caroline's name, my wife. Nothing too alarming. Many couples keep separate accounts for financial flexibility. But then I saw a transaction. $2,500 withdrawn, labeled transferred to college trust fund. I blinked. We do have a college fund for our kid. That part's true. But it's with Fidelity, not CF Bank. And I've never heard Caroline mention any other trust fund. A sick feeling crept in, like discovering a tiny crack in a window. Small, but capable of spreading into a spiderweb if left unchecked. I kept digging. There were more envelopes like this, from the same bank, same format, but dating back several years. All addressed to Caroline, and all following the same transaction pattern. Money in, then money out for the college trust fund. I opened the Fidelity app on my phone. There were only contributions from me. Caroline, who's always claimed she's been contributing regularly, was completely absent. I didn't want to believe it. I wanted to believe it was a mistake, or maybe a separate fund I'd never heard of. But then, I did what I always do when I see something unclear. I made a spreadsheet. Call me a nerd, but I created a detailed table with every deposit, date, and transaction over the past 5 years. The total, $167,800. I read that number over and over again. $167,800 from our child's college fund. That night, Caroline came home from a weekend leadership retreat, one of those events she's been attending more and more lately. She was smiling brightly, talking about team-building exercises, about how her boss was considering promoting her to a management position. I just nodded, offering a weak smile. In my head, I couldn't stop thinking about those statements. I asked Caroline if she was tired. She said no, and even cheerfully offered to make me some tea, something she rarely does. I smiled and thanked her. She had no idea that I had discovered something. Or maybe she guessed something was up, because that night, she was especially affectionate, even mentioning plans for our upcoming 17th wedding anniversary trip. I nodded and told her I had a few ideas. She smiled happily, and I smiled too, because in my mind, I had already begun to map out the most calculated and precise revenge plan I'd ever considered. I still remember the numbness that shot down my spine when I opened the first bank statement from that CF Bank envelope. It was a Monday morning, just a few hours after Caroline left for work as usual. It all started with something as mundane as filing taxes. I'm a meticulous person, so all the financial documents for the household are carefully stored in our fireproof safe. Since Megan was born, I've made it a habit to keep everything related to our family finances. Insurance contracts, mortgage papers, pay stubs, and our children's birth certificates. Everything is organized and labeled by year, but that pale yellow envelope had never been part of any file I'd organized. I opened it, intending to glance through it and set it aside. But the italicized phrase, University Trust Withdrawal, stopped me dead in my tracks. I read it, then read it again. A withdrawal of $2,500 had been made from an account in Caroline's name. University Trust. Why was money being withdrawn from a fund I, the father, who has been working overtime for years to contribute, had never heard of? And why was there no deposit from Caroline into the official Fidelity account I check every month? I started digging further, and I found 6 more envelopes, all with CF Bank's logo. Each envelope contained a statement stretching back to 2020. Every month, or every 2 months, there were deposits made, then disappeared just days later, with the same recurring description: trust transfer, university investment. I opened the Fidelity app and checked the college savings accounts for Megan and Jake. There were no contributions from Caroline. Everything was from me, my salary, bonuses, and even a portion I had deferred from buying a car last year to add more. At that moment, I sat frozen on the bedroom floor, alone. Then I stood up, grabbed my laptop, and opened Google Sheets. Call me a nerd if you want, but it was the only way I could keep my focus. I started tracking each transaction, each withdrawal, every description, every date. Columns filled in: withdrawal date, amount, description, and destination. Each row felt like a cut. The first one in January 2020, the second in March, the third in June, then September, then the next year, and then more. The total, $167,800. I felt like I was sitting in the eye of a storm. My mind was spinning, angry, scared, and desperate. But what surprised me the most was the calm. I didn't yell. I didn't smash anything. I didn't call Caroline to confront her. I just kept adding each number into the spreadsheet, one hand steady on the mouse, the other holding the now cold cup of coffee. I knew I was facing something bigger than betrayal. It was a conspiracy. A parallel life I had never imagined. I added a new column, projected interest rate. If I invested this amount in Fidelity with an average 4% return each year, how much was it worth now? I entered the formula. Google responded with a different number, $198,400, nearly $200,000, almost 5 years of college, almost an entire future for Megan and Jake. And I, the one who thought my wife was supporting us, was the one who'd been betrayed from the very beginning. I printed the spreadsheet, folded it, slipped it into an envelope, labeled it, the truth. And I knew from that moment on, I wasn't just a regular husband anymore. I was a man preparing for the biggest battle of my life, not for revenge, but to reclaim what belongs to my children. They say when you look long enough into deceit, it starts to look back at you. And when that happens, you're no longer the same person. I'm not sure what exact moment caused my transformation. Maybe it was Caroline's half-hearted hug when she came home that Sunday, or the strange glint in her eye when she mentioned her new, talented boss. The same man I later found out was Harold, the one who co-signed the second house with my wife. I used to believe in love. Kind where you go through all the ups and downs with the person you love, from losing your job to Jake breaking his arm and spending a week in the hospital. We ate instant noodles for a month to pay for hospital bills. And yet, all those years I thought I was walking alongside my life partner. She was quietly building another life, just 20 minutes away from me. That yellow house, not fancy, not extravagant, but enough to make me feel completely betrayed. She walked in like it was her only home, not the place where 2 children were waiting for their mom to come home for dinner, not the house that we had both saved every penny to fix, one brick at a time. I sat in the car for 2 hours. The feelings inside me weren't anger anymore. It was something closer to liberation. I didn't need to pretend to trust her anymore. I didn't need to look into Caroline's lying eyes and tell myself that everything would be okay. I needed to make a plan, and I started doing that the moment Harold wrapped his arm around my wife's waist in front of that yellow house. The next morning I called Adele, Harold's wife, after finding her through a Facebook post celebrating their 10-year wedding anniversary. I sent her a vague message, simply saying we needed to talk, that it had something to do with her husband, Harold. We arranged to meet at a Starbucks outside of town. I wasn't sure what to expect, but Adele was not the type of woman who could be easily broken by heartache. She was sharp, incredibly composed. After just 10 minutes of conversation, she pulled up her banking app, checked the withdrawals, then turned to look at me, her eyes so cold that I shivered. She said something that stayed with me. If they choose to live like it's some romance novel, I'll turn it into a tragedy. We began to plan. A plan that required meticulous attention to detail, patience, and a little bit of cold-bloodedness. I created a Google spreadsheet, probably the most detailed one I'd ever made, with columns for date, amount, description, account transferred to, and status recovered or pending. I didn't just list the amount Caroline had embezzled, $167,800. I also calculated the lost interest over the past 5 years, bringing the total to nearly $198,400. Every penny, every breath of betrayal. Caroline had no idea. She still came home, still had dinner, still laughed with the kids as if nothing had happened. But I started making small changes, printing out university brochures, leaving them accidentally on the dining table, casually mentioning refinancing the house to help pay for the kids' tuition, asking Caroline about buying investment properties in the suburbs, exactly where the yellow house was located. And just as I predicted, she began to waver. Her hands shook when holding her glass of water. Her eyes couldn't meet mine when we spoke. She started doing strange things, becoming more affectionate with me, talking about retirement plans, saying maybe after all, we should move somewhere warm and spend the rest of our lives together. I just smiled. Every day she tried harder to be the perfect wife. I added another line to my spreadsheet. Adele moved faster than I expected. She gathered legal documents, contacted her own attorney, and even started tracking Harold via GPS on his car. She discovered that Harold had also been financially dishonest. He had taken a loan on their primary house to help pay for the secret home he had with Caroline. Everything was becoming clearer. 2 betrayers had built their castle with the money of innocent children. That weekend, Caroline said she needed to go to a leadership training. I nodded, not asking questions. But instead, I quietly packed my bags. Not for her, but for me and the kids. I moved important documents to a secret storage. I set up a new bank account, changed all the passwords, and locked access to our shared finances. I was no longer the naive husband. I was a father determined to protect his children's future at all costs. By the end of that Sunday, I watched Caroline in the kitchen, humming a soft tune, preparing for the week ahead, unaware that the world of lies she had built was about to come crashing down in less than 9 days. And the most ironic part? She was picking out a dress for our 17th wedding anniversary vacation. A vacation she believed was a reward for her fake fidelity. But no, it was the final farewell. To her career, her assets, and the family she had lost by her own hand. 3 days since I sent the message. We deserve a special anniversary trip. 3 days since I sat in front of an Excel spreadsheet, facing the cold truth that the woman I had loved for almost 2 decades, the mother of my children, had quietly drained their future education funds to build a parallel life for herself. 3 days, but it felt like 3 years. My plan was slowly taking shape, each step carried out with the calm, cold precision of someone who had lost all illusions, but not their sanity. Caroline seemed excited about the trip. She even started shopping for new dresses, calling the salon to book hair and nail appointments. All paid for on the credit card I had decided to freeze the moment we left. I encouraged her, pretending to be excited, even suggesting that she pick the fanciest restaurant in the city for our first night. What she didn't know was that, while she was enjoying the role of the perfect wife preparing for a dream vacation, I, the detail-oriented husband, was quietly transferring all our important assets, legal documents, and the remaining savings into my name or accounts I controlled. Each document was time-stamped, and every screenshot of her messages with Harold was backed up on 3 hard drives in the cloud. I wasn't going to let one careless minute ruin the performance of my life. Sam, Caroline's coworker and my valuable eyes and ears, kept me updated. She told me that Harold had requested time off right when Caroline mentioned to me that she needed to go for training. Quite the strange coincidence, right? She shook her head. No, just work. It's been a little overwhelming lately. We could retire somewhere warm someday, I said, trying a psychological move. Florida, maybe. She hesitated. I haven't thought that far ahead. Then let's focus on the present, I smiled. I have an anniversary gift for you. Caroline laughed louder, genuinely excited. I saw her relax, thinking everything was going exactly as she had hoped. She had no idea the gift wasn't jewelry. The gift was the truth. 9:30 p.m., in the quiet hotel room, with only the soft hum of the air conditioner, I opened my laptop and placed it on the table in front of Caroline. Look at this for me, I said, then opened the Excel file. Caroline's eyes scanned the spreadsheet. A long row of numbers, columns color-coded by year, bank name, transaction date, withdrawal amount, receiving account. Notes. I didn't say anything. I let her figure it out on her own. In less than 30 seconds, her face went pale. What is this? She asked, her voice trembling. I didn't answer. I just opened another tab. The asset file for 1472 Oak Ridge Lane, the house in Harold and Caroline's name, the mortgage, the down payment. I spoke softly. $167,800 from the kids' fund. You used it to buy a home with your lover. That home is now mine. Caroline started crying. Not the graceful tears she used when she was upset with me or the kids. These were real tears. Panic, ugly, smudged mascara. Bryson, I'm sorry. I don't know why I did this. Harold, I reached out and stopped her mid-sentence. Don't. No need for explanations. You just need to choose one of 3 options. Caroline went silent as I laid out the 3 options. No threats. Just terms, clearly typed out in a file I had prepared. I could feel her shoulders tremble as she read each line. She realized she was about to lose everything. Not just money, but her honor, her children's trust, and her freedom if everything went to the tax authorities and her workplace. She lowered her head. No more resistance. I left her in the hotel room and stepped out without saying another word. There was no joy, no sense of victory in my heart. Just relief. After 17 years of living in an illusion, I could finally breathe with my own lungs again, no longer suffocated by lies. The next morning I woke up in a budget hotel on the other side of the city, my mind unusually light. No dreams, no anxiety, no longer the feeling of being crushed by someone's weight on my chest, like I had for months. It was just a quiet morning, the cold tea slowly settling on the table, and me, a man standing before a new beginning, though unsure of what it would bring. Caroline chose option 1. That very Monday she showed up at my lawyer's office, pale, no makeup, hair messy as if she hadn't had time to comb it. She shakily signed the papers, transferring the ownership of the house from Harold to me, relinquishing her 401k, and agreeing to a 5-year repayment plan with interest. No argument, no playing the victim anymore. She understood that the game was over. The house that had been their secret little home now belonged to me, ready to be listed for sale. The assets were divided according to the law, and more importantly, according to what was just. At the same time, Harold, Caroline's lover, was blindsided by an ultimatum from his wife, Adel. No debate. Adel, a banker, handled everything swiftly, efficiently, and without mercy. Harold was forced to transfer his share of the house, and the entire mortgage would be settled by the sale of the property. After I took my share, a home built on betrayal had finally become a financial debt. In the following weeks, my lawyer and I coordinated to arrange paperwork, list the house, and find a trustworthy broker. Within 6 days, the house had received 11 offers, finally selling for $535,000, higher than expected. After taxes, fees, and the remaining mortgage, my share amounted to $97,352. I didn't touch a penny of that money. It went straight into a new college fund for the kids. This time, an account in just my name and that of Frank, my financial advisor. I told the kids everything one Friday evening. Not everything, but enough for them to understand that their mom had done something wrong, that we no longer shared the same home, and that I was doing everything I could to protect their future. Megan, with the sensitivity and maturity of a 16-year-old, sat quietly for a long time before asking, "Mom loves someone else, doesn't she?" I nodded. Jake cried. He didn't say anything, just cried and said, "I believed Mom." I hugged him. For the first time in months, I felt like a real father, not because I uncovered the truth, but because I did the right thing afterward. Caroline moved in with her sister. Once a well-known manager at her company, she was now working an entry-level office job, earning half of what she used to make. She tried to make monthly payments for the scholarship fund, on time, as if to redeem the last bit of her conscience. As for me, I started cleaning up my life, piece by piece. I fixed the leaking faucet, repainted the living room, rearranged the bedrooms. I hung up family photos again, this time just me and the kids. Megan and I spent every Monday evening browsing college websites together, looking at scholarships, costs, and career paths. Jake started picking up math again, a subject he once hated. On Sundays, I took the kids hiking, something I had neglected for years. I also returned to an old passion, drawing. My first sketches were messy doodles, but I didn't care. I wasn't drawing to sell. I was drawing to remind myself that I was still human, not just a victim. I also signed up for therapy, for the first time in many years. The therapist asked me, "Have you forgiven her?" I thought for a moment and then answered, "I don't think I've forgiven her, but I've chosen not to let hatred control the rest of my life." She smiled. "So, you've healed." Adel and I stayed in touch. We didn't talk about healing or empathy in any emotional way. We were two people who had been betrayed, who had fallen to the bottom, and together we were climbing back up. She once said, "Not everyone is strong enough to be in pain and still stay fair." I don't know if I'm truly fair yet, but I do know one thing. I've gotten back everything they thought they would hide forever and turned it into a stepping stone to rebuild my life. One evening, when everything seemed to have settled down, I sat in my office opening the spreadsheet from years ago, the one that recorded every penny Caroline had stolen. The total amount I had recovered, $173,600. Another $24,800 plus interest would be paid back over the next 5 years, and every dollar was meticulously accounted for, clearly documented. Not because I'm a control freak, but because I wanted to teach my kids something. Every action has consequences, and justice doesn't need to scream to be heard. It only requires persistence and self-respect. In the final month of spring, soft golden sunlight filtered through the kitchen window. I stood at the counter, brewing my usual cup of black coffee. The smell of coffee, the soft drip of the machine, and the radio playing jazz in the background, all the same as always. But I was no longer the same person. It had been almost a year since that night. The night I left Caroline sitting alone in the hotel room, facing the truth, the final blow of the game she had started. And now, I'm writing these words as a conclusion, not for her, not for Harold, but for myself. The divorce was finalized 47 days ago. No one objected. No one asked for changes. The judge simply skimmed through the paperwork, listened for 15 minutes, and banged the gavel. Caroline left in a taxi. I don't even remember which way I drove home, just that the radio was playing a Sinatra song, "That's Life." Adal sent me a simple congratulatory text. "We made it." She started her new life now, moved to another city with her 2 sons. She doesn't talk much about Harold anymore, nor does she mention the past. Like me, she's learning to live with the pieces, not to forget, but to move on. I sold the old car, the one Caroline used to drive every weekend to her secret home. Not because I needed the money, but because I didn't want anything in my life that still smelled of betrayal. I changed the bed linens, repainted the walls, rearranged the dining room. Piece by piece, I removed every trace of her from the house. But there was one thing I didn't touch. The family photo from when Jake was 7. That photo was real. Those smiles were real. It's just that everything after that became a play I was never given the script for. Megan is now preparing to submit her college application. She's chosen psychology as her major, saying she wants to understand people more, their motivations, and even their wounds. One time I asked her why she picked that field. Megan looked at me, her gaze more mature than her years. "I think, if I can understand Mom, maybe I won't feel the pain anymore." I spent the entire evening holding my daughter. Jake, on the other hand, is learning to trust again. He joined the school basketball team, made new friends, and recently won an essay contest on the topic, "What is family?" His essay left me speechless. Family isn't just about who lives with you, it's about who stays when everything falls apart. As for Caroline, she's still making her monthly payments, just as promised. She doesn't try to call me anymore, but she sometimes leaves short, awkward messages for the kids. Brief, forced, but more genuine than before. She came to Jake's birthday party last month. In the middle of the party, she stood still for a long while, looking around at the house that used to be ours. I knew she was remembering the good days before greed turned everything to dust. I don't hate her anymore, and I don't feel pain anymore. I just feel empty. Forgiveness isn't about opening the door for someone to come back. It's about closing that door from the inside and moving on without carrying the burden. Every morning, I still wake up at 6 a.m. I drink my coffee, open my laptop, work, help the kids with their homework. At night, I read or draw. I'm recreating a painting I left unfinished 6 years ago. This time, I'm painting not for anyone else, but because I want to. The balance in the kids' college fund is now $173,600.12. Enough for Jake to choose any school he wants, and Megan is almost certain to get a full scholarship. I still receive regular payments from Caroline. Every cent is accounted for. Each time I update the spreadsheet, I no longer feel anger. I only feel gratitude, because there are lessons that come at a cost. With blood, with tears, but without them, I would never have learned how to stand up again. I write these final words not to seek sympathy, but to close the chapter. Every story needs a period at the end, so people know it's come to the end of the road. Caroline may have destroyed many things, but I didn't let her destroy my children's future. I didn't let her destroy my belief in myself. I've rebuilt my life, brick by brick, tear by tear. From a betrayed husband to a strong father, from a victim to a person living with purpose. And I think, maybe, that's enough. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If you've ever been in a similar situation, know that you're not alone, and you always have the right to write a new chapter for your life. If this story has touched a part of your heart, leave a comment, share it, or subscribe to support me. It's a great motivation for me to continue sharing more real, emotional, and impactful stories. Now, goodbye, and I'll see you in the next story.